Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. Hi, welcome. My name is Chris Azuki, and I'm the Executive Director of the Patricia Research Center for the Arts. Thank you. Not for me, for the building. Welcome, also affectionately known as the Reser. Thank you all so much for being here in our first ever such event in this space, in the lobby space. So this is part of our Insight series for our art gallery. And before we begin, I want to acknowledge the people on whose land this art center is built upon, the Atfalati Kalapuyans. We acknowledge and express gratitude for the ancestors of this place and recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their continuation in our own community. Here at the Reser, we are all about connection, developing a deeper understanding, and joy, bringing you the arts. And this is a very good example of that happening. For a long time, before this place sprouted out, it feels like, from the ground during the pandemic, we always had a dream to launch our art gallery exhibition series with a show on indigenous artists and about indigenous peoples. And this developed very organically, thanks to the Portland Chamber Orchestra and Yaki Bergman, who joins us here on Zoom. Hello, Yaki. He can't see me, but he can hear me. And so about 3 or 4 years ago, I feel like, it's been a blur, we were connected with Yaki, Joe, Nancy, and Ed, and had a meeting at Jim and Patty's coffee shop where this dream was born. And so you're seeing this coming to fruition as we speak, or momentarily, with the art exhibition as well as this panel. And also I'd like to remind you that this is connected to and you will be reminded throughout, a performance by the Portland Chamber Orchestra with a brand new commission by Nancy Ives on June 4th inside the theater. So if you haven't picked up your tickets yet, this is a perfect time today to do so at our box office. And without further ado, I will introduce you to our art gallery coordinator, Karen De Benedetti. Karen?
I'm going to sit down. Hello. Hello? Sorry. How's everybody doing today? Can you guys hear that? Oh, okay. Those are my cheating notes. Welcome, everybody. As Chris said, this is definitely a part of the whole entire Reser program, the first ever Insights program for the gallery. So I'm pretty excited to be featuring these fabulous artists. The Insights program, just to kind of clue everybody in, that flyer that we were given when you walked in the door, those are the 3 artist talks that are part of this program. And we have 2 more of them. So on Saturday, May 14th, we have Annalie Fuentes and also Richard Rowland, who will be talking about cosmology and mythologies in their work. And then we also have part of the partnership program on Sunday, May 22nd. That's going to be Lillian Pitt, Greg Archuleta, Greg Robinson, and Sarah Seastream. And they are going to be talking about the culture that manifests within themselves and their work. So I hope that you all tell everyone about your experience today and come back for future opportunities. As many of you know, our exhibit is Celilo Never Silenced. I hope you have all actually had a chance to get in there and see it, but if you haven't, we're of course open afterwards. We're open Wednesday through Saturdays 10 to 6, so you can come at any time to see the show. Today, to get the artist talk started, we're going to start with a song that's going to be sung and drumming with Ed Edmo and his son John. So if you give a warm welcome to John and Ed. Thanks.
Bill lived from Willamette Falls, down past Neocala. After I lived in 12 Plains. Santiam, Calabria, lived on the Santiam River. Calabria proper was from Eugene. Women were chiefs. If a slave, more like a servant, married to a tribal person, they would lose their slave status and become part of the tribe. They spoke to the new moon as it came out. We are still here. We are alive. Thank you. I do that now. Part of the ceremony. They gathered roots, hunted, survived throughout these years. Salvage Island was called Wapato Island. That's where the Monument lived. Through intermarriage and through disease, most of them are now extinct. Thank you. That's no story. Not a long time ago, there was no Columbia River. The Cascade Mountains are there was a great big lake. If you believe science, talk about the Missoula flood, where glacier melted up in Missoula, Montana, 3.5 million years ago, forming the rivers and lakes of the Northwest. But that's science. Want to know what does Indians say? Coyote took a big stick to the top of the mountains and dug and sang a powerful song. Everyone gets a stick out. Help me say it. Gets a stick up. Everyone. Coyote took a big stick to the top of the mountain and dug and sang a powerful song. Can you say it, everyone? Coyote took a big stick to the top of the mountain and dug and sang a powerful song. Coyote took a big stick to the top of the mountain and dug and sang a powerful song. Coyote took a big stick to the top of the mountain and dug and sang a powerful song. Coyote took a big stick to the top of the mountains and dug and sang a powerful song. Coyote took a big stick to the top of the mountain and dug and sang a powerful song. And the water broke through, forming what Indians call Enchiwana. That's what they call the Columbia River. It means big river, because the Columbia River is a big river, right? Animal people moved down to the riverbanks to be closer to the water. Well, Coyote was proud of stuff. He made Enchiwana. He was walking up and down Enchiwana to see what he made. You saw the animal people that had much to eat. Kiowa cleared to the ocean. You saw many salmon swimming in the ocean. Used his power, told the salmon to swim upstream. That's how Coyote made Enchiwana, and that's why the salmon swim upstream. And that's a Caldwell legend. Thank you.
As you can see already, our guests are definitely multi-talented individuals. I'd like to introduce all of our guests today. We have Ed Edmo, who just did the storytelling about Coyote. We have Nancy Ives, who is the lead cellist for the Oregon Symphony. We have Joe Cantrell sitting here as a talented artist, and Yaki Bergman is up on the Zoom screen. I feel like I'm sort of cutting them a little short by not giving a lot of background about them, but they each have brought so much to this program, and through the work that we've done here, there's just been this really nice relationship that's kind of blossomed out of it, and I feel really lucky to be a part of that and to be brought into this circle. We're gonna kind of get the program going already. If at this time, if you have not already silenced your cell phone, if you would do that for us, please, we'd greatly appreciate that. You can take photographs throughout today if you want to, but we ask that no flash photography and no filming. So thank you. We'll get started. Yaki, you're on. Can you hear us?
It's kind of, I hear a little bit, it's not very clear. When you speak to me, try to speak close to the microphone. It's kind of, there's something, the acoustic comes into the sound. In any case, it's so wonderful to be here and to be part of this very special event. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
distinguished guests and creators. This is a milestone event in my life as a musician and as a human being. And it all started with a very simple lunch with Nancy Ives at the Celilo Music Festival in Lincoln City, the Oregon coast, where we realized that there is an incredible opportunity and an obligation, actually, to do something about being the artistic director of the Celilo Music Festival. I always felt that it is important to create something that will be of significance, to honor the name, honor the people, and honor the history and the legacy of the Native American indigenous people. So as Nancy and I enjoyed lunch together, we started kind of, exchanging ideas. And this very, very beginning, modest beginning, led to a wonderful long collaboration, communication, and exchange of ideas. And here we are. The rest is almost history. I mean, the history will be once we premiere the piece. But for me, this is a remarkable, remarkable journey that I cannot tell you how honored and excited I am about getting to know closely Ed and Joe, and having the chance to visit the Celilo Falls and get to know the sounds. And those are the sounds that actually inspired the creation of this piece. And I will let Nancy obviously talk more about it. But it's a very, very, very exciting. It's almost like a dream come true for not just necessarily a conductor, a musician, a human being, to be part of such a form, such a reality, such a moment.
So, if I may, I'm about to perform a piece that is one of the ones that forms the basis of the piece will be premiering on June 4th. After Yaki and I talked, and we'll talk more about how this collaborative team grew, but that was the summer of 2019, and you know what happened the following winter. And so there we were with no foreseeable opportunity to actually do an orchestra piece. So I was working at home and just doing live streams, but it didn't have to stop me. I had Ed's beautiful poetry, and I play the cello, and I have some, well, you can judge for yourself, some ability to sing, and I can do them both at the same time. So I used the time to set some of the poetry to music, and I'm going to perform one of them because this is really, for me, these are the seeds of the piece, of the music. I would like Ed to read this first poem because not only do you get the pleasure of hearing him read his poem, but I'm not a professional singer, and my diction, well, I can't promise that my diction will be good enough for you to understand the words. But Ed, if you would read Celilo Fisherman.
Let me give you a background. I like to keep paper and pen near me, and I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. I didn't use today or yesterday. And I was sobering up by Scappoose, and I had a postcard of Celilo. And I was thinking about, I was raised there, blah, 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 So I wrote a poem called Celilo Fisherman. You made your nets and tested the knots, seeing that they held. Little did you know what was to hold you after the sound of water falling over what used to be.
Did that poem already inspire you?
If you do not have a chair yet, if you want to come on in and grab a seat, we've got a few on the other side over here. And also, there was a piece of paper in everyone's chair when you sat down. If you have questions that you come up during the presentation and you would like to present those for our question and answer afterwards, you can go ahead and write your question down, pass it to the end of the aisle, and our volunteers will pick those up for you for the end at the question and answer time. Thanks, Nancy. Oops.
It makes me very happy to get a smile from Ed, needless to say. Yeah. So after Yaki and I talked, and I felt just ignited by the idea, and Yaki is an amazing collaborator. You feel the collaborative flow going just every time you talk to him. So it was a very exciting possibility, but I didn't know, I needed a collaborator, a Native American collaborator who wanted to have some kind of, their story told in the medium of classical music, of orchestral classical music. And I was casting about, I felt that I was attracted to wanting to say something about Celilo Falls, which you might remember was in the news at the time of how the Army Corps of Engineers still had not fulfilled its promises, right? That was very much in the news at the time, and I felt I have my own feelings about that, but it's not my story to tell. And then I realized I know someone who is a connector extraordinaire, Joe Cantrell. And I was kicking myself. We've been friends for many years, worked together in Classical Up Close, and he generously donates his photographic skill and talent for some of the organizations that I perform with. So I talked to Joe, and he immediately saw the potential for something really special, and he connected me with Ed. So after our first meeting with Ed and Carol, it just felt like, oh, I'm getting goosebumps right now just remembering how much it was like, yes. I mean, Ed is a writer, a great writer. We've got it. This is our story. And so we have the personal experience through Ed's poetry, and there are 4 poems that are included in the piece, and then a story that's a personal childhood recollection. And we have Joe bringing imagery that, that Joe can tell you more about that, but he's bringing this, like there's the personal dimension and the verbal dimension, and then there's the sort of 35,000 foot looking at deep time, which is one of the movements, actually. It's called Deep Time. This is directly inspired by Joe and his vision. And as a musician and a composer, having the personal perspective and the universal perspective encompassed in one thing is just incredible opportunity, because music is the perfect medium for that, right? Can you imagine anything better? I keep getting chills. I'm just thinking about it. It's just making the poetry, of course, there won't be singing in the orchestra piece, but Ed will read the poem, and then my orchestration of the pieces that I wrote will happen, and which was an amazing, so I get to see how words inspire sound that doesn't, music without words, and I get to see how the words are embedded in the music. So that's really a magical experience for me. So Joe Cantrell, well, I already introduced him a little bit, right? Connector extraordinaire, talented artist, photographer, human being, everything. So take it away, Joe.
Can you take us to 35,000 feet?
I'll take you. 35,000 feet is just the beginning. A number of years ago, I was in the southeastern part of Utah photographing pictographs. And pictographs are the images, the old ones left on the cliff walls down there. Many of them are faded and visible, most of them are. But there is software available, developed by a NASA scientist, that uses the principles of old spy satellite software, of all things, to make them visible again. And in shooting some of the most remarkable sites down there, I discovered, I'm also kind of an amateur, very amateur geologist, paleontologist, and I discovered they had put these figures among dinosaur bones eroding out of the cliff. So I put 2 and infinity together and started realizing the pictographs were not on the rock, they were of the rock. The old ones lived with a perspective much broader than ours, I think. They didn't divide things up into a Cartesian organization. They saw it as a whole. And I personally believe this is something that we have mostly lost to our great peril. We see the earth as separate from us. We are part of it. We are all one. So that led to photographing, I'll show you. This one is, yeah. That one is printed back there. That's up at She Who Watches on the Washington side. And the 2 figures you see, which we've called Walking Together, are visible now. None of the rest of it is. But the software brings it out. And the bird here, the bird on the your left side here, you see that profile? It's only visible at certain times of the year and certain times of the day when the sun is in a position to throw that shadow. But the old ones saw it and gave it plumage. They were that sensitive. I've been back to that exact place a number of times and looked for it, and I swear it is not there. But when the shadow shows it, when the creator shows it, it's there. And they gave it plumage. So I have followed through with that, and my friend Crystal Truelove, fellow Cherokee, had been, she's standing in front of the window back there. She had been helping some people, working with some people up at Lyle, Washington. They're Yakimas for the most part. And they're fishermen, and they're living very simply, but they live in 24/7 relationship with the salmon. And through them, I met Martha Truelove. Through Crystal, I met Martha Truelove, who is on her way here. I don't know if she's going to make it or not. Is Martha here?
Martha Cloud? I think maybe.
I think Martha may be in the house. And she led us to incredible things. When she heard that Nancy was writing a symphony called Celilo Falls, we were there. She told me, bring her up here. 24 hours later, we were there, which is a miracle in itself if you know Nancy's schedule. And Martha took Nancy out on the Klickitat River. Maybe some of you know that. It's a narrow, rapid stream through solid basalt. And she had Nancy take off her sunglasses. It was a summer day. She had her take off her sunglasses and lie face down with her forehead against the rock, hands to the sides. That's one remarkable woman right there. And so the river would become part of the symphony through Nancy. The river was pounding against that rock she was on. And I'll tell you one other thing, I'm going on too long. I'd watched the fishermen the previous day for about 20 man-hours fishing for, nobody had touched a fish. They weren't in the river yet. But a young man named Patrick dropped his net right between Martha and Nancy, and immediately there was a big salmon in it. Indian-wise, that's an omen. Yeah.
That day was amazing. Martha knew exactly what I needed to really connect with what my piece was about, right? And just kept telling me, you need to do this and you need to do that. And every time I did what she told me to do, I had like an epiphany. So thank you. Oh, so I'm going to share one more of the poetry settings. In some ways, this one to me is the theme song of the larger work. It's called Grandfather's Storyteller. So it's very much about Ed. And this one was actually performed by the very young musicians of the Portland Youth Philharmonic Young Strings in an arrangement made specially for them. So it's had already a little bit of extra life. Would you read the poem, please?
Yes. What happened was that I had signed over the rights to the Santa Clara Pueblo people to build a senior center in Santa Clara. And they put the poem on a very big poster with Pablito Velarde. She since died, a really famous Native American artist. So I'm gonna go there and say, you have to feed me. I helped build your center. I'm hungry now. But this is how it goes. Grandfather storyteller, I come to you with thirsty ears. Grandfather storyteller, weaving words of age and strength, words floating on rivers of purity. Words. I come to you with wisdom that's not yours alone. Wisdom you shall pass. Wisdom I shall share with the children. Grandfather storyteller, I come to you with thirsty ears. Thank you.
Just a reminder, if you have questions that you want to pass up to any of our volunteers, they are ready and willing to accept them. So you can just pass them to the end of the rows and they'll pick them up for you. Thank you. That was amazing. Do you have any questions that are being passed back and forth? Not yet. Okay.
Well, so shall I share a little about how something like that turns into a piece for chamber orchestra? So basically, it takes using the melody and harmony and just assigning instruments to it, and which is, you know, a fascinating and creative process in its own right. And I think it will definitely be recognizable when you hear the full version, but it is very different. Another feature of some of the other pieces are air sounds, because I wanted you to really, well, the very first movement is named Enchiwana for obvious reasons, and it's kind of like an overture, and that was actually premiered back at the Slets Bay Music Festival in September. And it was, some of what I learned when Martha took me to the Klickitat was that there is an underlying rhythm to the roaring of a waterfall. It isn't just white noise. And that waterfall had in musical terms, a 4:3 ratio. So I've actually rewritten that movement. It's a very subtle thing, but I rewrote it so that there's a 4:3 ratio with the air sounds, because basically people are going to be going, the wind instruments are going to be going, just making an air sound. And when you hear a bunch of people doing that, it sounds like the roar of a waterfall in the distance. Or is it the ghost, actually, of a waterfall? Another thing, I don't think anyone here knows this but me. I am so glad you did how Coyote created Enchiwana. Mm-hmm. Because I actually embedded the way you tell that story, into the piece. Now, you won't recognize. I used the rhythm of when he tells the story as a rhythm for a melody in the piece. So it's one of those subtle ways of having the text be embedded into the music. And it adds a spark of inspiration for me. But so now you know. The Coyote story, you've heard it in person, and a little bit of the inflection of Ed's voice and the rhythm that he uses when he says it is into the piece.
Okay. So our first question is, how has it been collaborating between visual arts, music, and storytelling? And I think this is kind of a question for all of you.
Well, I feel like I'm the one who's being creatively fed by their artistry to create the music. So, and I don't know, I mean, I love it a lot. It's pretty great. I mean, it's also the personal connections and energy and graciousness, and that also really feeds that creative process. But yeah, I think it's just like an extra level. It's an extra dimension of creative fertility.
Yeah, for me, I've been published around the world. In the 80s, a professor at University of Oregon, Barry Tolkien, says they're publishing some Indian stuff in New Zealand. I want to send you some of your work. I said, yeah, here's 5. We published 3 of them. So this is a new venue for me getting out into classical music. Yaki's going to get me my favorite piece is Beethoven Emperor Concerto, piano concerto. He's going to get me involved next year to go to listen to it live. It's going to be nice because that's my favorite piece in the world. I don't understand much about classical music. It's for me to learn more and to expand my horizons and to meet all these people like you, you know. It's really nice to get on this, and then I don't know what's going to happen after this. I'm thinking about doing a show called Coyote All Jazzed Up. And hiring some jazz musicians to write the music and probably play here at the producer in a couple of years. So we'll see. That's just a dream. My another dream is to write a documentary about Celilo. I'm in one called Echoes of Water Against the Rocks on YouTube. Echoes of Water Against the Rocks, you can watch that. And then, not too many people know about Celilo Falls. People our age know about it. Since they've been there, they've seen it. People that are younger than us, two generations, people nowadays don't understand what Celilo Falls is or was. I was there when they flooded the water. I moved to Wishrum, Washington. My father worked on a railroad, took me out of school, and I thought, how can something so beautiful, so wonderful be covered up? Really hurt my heart hard, really, really bad. I couldn't figure it out. Thank you.
The only time I ever saw my grandfather cry was when we discovered that the lake the Corps of Engineers had created in the Cookson Hills of Oklahoma had flooded his allotment that he had had as a boy. That carried great impact for me. I was a photojournalist in Asia for 15 years, and one of my proudest achievements there was helping a tribe stop a dam the World Bank was going to build in the Philippines. The people said, "We are the land. The land is us. There is no separation. If they're going to flood our land, we're going to kill as many of them as we can." And so there was killing going on. We managed to get that story into the Wall Street Journal, and when the president of the World Bank saw it, he canceled the dam. Wow. Yeah.
You see who we're dealing with here?
So true.
That was a hoot. So I have, and I'm one big goose. I with all this stuff happening, I walk around with goosebumps all the time. But the same thing applies, of course, with Celilo. It's almost exactly the same, except Celilo pre-dam was the cultural and trading center for most of the Western North American continent. It was huge. People came from hundreds of miles away to Celilo. So it was a lot more than just people losing their land and their the ability to fish there. It was being moved completely away from the river in many cases, and having their culture, their identities crushed. There is a term that's used a lot these days, resilience, that I think is so overused it's become almost trite. But they have it. And when I took Yaki, I took him up to She Who Watches, then to Lyle, and then to the Klickitat. When we got to She Who Watches, we saw a spirit animal that I recognized from several years ago. I went there to be with the old ones when the first snow fell. And as I walked up to it, I saw this canine, absolutely silver, metallic silver, come out of the rocks, run the length of the cliffs, and go up and disappear. I was completely mystified by that. It was too beautiful to be a coyote. I'm predisposed to see a coyote. I've known Ed Hidden a long time. When Yaki and I got out of the car, we saw the same animal, except its front half was red. It was a fox, and I had seen it in full winter array. This time it was about half or not molted, whatever they do, shed. It was half red and half silver. And when I took Karen there, we went to the Klickitat. We looked for Martha and couldn't find her. So we went over to the Klickitat and nobody was there. But we went above the Cloud family fishing site and just sat and watched the water come down. There were salmon jumping. And we heard this pock, pock, pock. And those salmon, in order to help themselves over this step in the falls, were jumping up and hitting their heads against the rock, which flipped their body this way. And when they came down, they were above the water that was so frothy they had no propulsion from their tails. So that's how this stuff has gone.
Yes,
I'm
there's
blessed.
wood block in the piece.
This shows how even a place in the middle of a town can have a spiritual presence. There must be 2,000 birds in that pond right outside us. And I live a 5-minute walk away, so I come down and take their pictures as the sun sets behind. Yep.
Wait a minute, you come by here once in a while? Joe has become a new resident of the Reeser. Yaki, you didn't have a chance to respond to that question yet, did you?
You know, the Portland Chamber Orchestra is an orchestra with a very clear mission, artistic mission, to really bring the arts together. And this mission really offers for many, many possibilities and collaborations that one never know where it leads you to, but one of them is this amazing opportunity to really come across ideas and individuals like the form in front of you that is so inspiring. We performing musicians are trained in the Eurocentric tradition mostly. We come, we learn Bach, we learn classical, romantic, contemporary styles and techniques. But eventually, as we grow as artists, and hopefully most of us, if not all of us, must reach the point where we need to listen to the sounds of our community, where we need to work with living composers that care and have something to say, that have to work with artists from other disciplines that wants to come and collaborate. For me, the experience of visiting the Celilo Falls with Joe was a remarkably spiritual, metaphysical, emotional, and musical. The silence when I was standing there near Sheer Watches and watching these sparks was loud. It wasn't silence, it was music. It was a complete immersion in something that is godly. And I came out of this day deeply moved and deeply changed, transformed. And one of the most beautiful experiences that I went through as a musician was I received from Nancy the score, and I was started studying it. I'm talking about only the very first 5 minutes that we were about to premiere at the Celeste Bay Music Festival. And I started imagining, what the sounds should be, what she is trying to evoke. And then one day I was opening my iPhone and I saw on Facebook a picture living on the rock in the Celilo Falls and listening to the sound of the water, of the falls. It was an awakening moment for me as an interpreter of her score. I suddenly came to realize what is there. It kind of was like it was steering me into much greater understanding of what we are talking about, of what we are listening to, what we are trying to evoke. So, and again, the reason I'm saying privilege and honor is because it's not just a musical experience. It's much beyond it, much above it, much more powerful. It's metaphysical, it's spiritual, it's a fulfillment of the mission. It's being an artist in a community, and that's why I respect so much the Portland Chamber Orchestra also as an ensemble that really is the vehicle to bring those sounds and to make it happen and to bring wonderful, wonderful people together with the spirit of collaboration, sharing it with the community. So and Joe, Nancy, you really brought a tremendous gift to my life and an opportunity to really carry something that is very precious to me personally as a musician, artist, and a human being, obviously.
See, it's against the law to shoot Indians now, right? They try to get rid of us. They give us smallpox blankets. They flooded us out. At the time, they built the Downs Dam. They built in Fort Thompson, they built the dam there, flooded out the Indian community. Then the Kinzuk Dam and the Iroquois Confederation, they built dams to flood us out, to separate us from the land, separate us from a culture. I saw my grandpa fish, my uncles fish, my dad fish, my brother fish. I thought, gee, when I grow up, I'll become a fisherman, you know? But my male part of the role model was taken away. I'm fishing right now. Got my fishing vest on, my fishing hat, my fishing tennis shoes. I'm fishing for an envelope with a check in it so I can take the Safeway and cash it and get food for my family. I fish in a different way.
I'm going to answer the question myself because I've been able to work with everyone here. It's part of this program and all of the artists. And I think from my perspective, it's been fabulous being a visual artist and the curator of the show. I, of course, love handling all the artwork. But I'm not going to lie. But one of the things I think has been really important is just bringing people together. The number of visitors that we've had in the gallery who tell me their stories, they share with me who their family members are. They share their experiences of knowing everyone who is sitting here on this panel. And I feel like the kind of cross-pollination of disciplines gives this broader perspective to all of us that is something that it's just, you can't measure how that affects everyone in so many different ways. And so being able to be kind of a center part of this by invitation, of course, I feel pretty special to be able to be a part of the group, kind of on the peripheral, but but it's been
you
really,
are.
it's been really nice. And as Joe says all the time, these things just keep happening miraculously. There's something there and makes it all happen. And every time that we all get together, it feels like there's another opportunity to say, yep, that just happened again. So I'm going to actually say that happened with the questions today too, because one of the questions was why classical music to tell the indigenous stories, and I feel like we started to even like kind of answer that question already.
I feel like you did exactly. I mean, well, why not? It does. I know it seems modern classical music is evolving. It doesn't stop. And yes, it's very much, as you just heard, I'm very much in the Western tradition, the Western classical music tradition. But I think modern classical music does have the ability to keep expanding and being permeable surely it brings something to others, to the stories that gives and I don't know. I don't think I can say it any better than you said it, Karen, about the way all the different people and disciplines. It just expands all of our possibilities and expands all of our perspectives. And to me, that's an unalloyed good, an intrinsically worthwhile thing all by itself. I don't know if that answers the question. But.
Pat Reeser, I was here at the groundbreaking for this place, and she stated the mission. It was presided over by a Navajo spiritual leader, and the stated purpose for this place is intercultural understanding. That's not the wording, but in short, that's what it is. And it is proving to be almost miraculous to me in its success so far. I mean, it's only been open since March 10th. And yeah, it's
Amazing.
yeah, the staff here, Karen, my gracious, she's been astonishing. Everybody, Miranda, Chris, we really have something here. This is precious, especially these days.
Yeah, well, and just to add to what I was trying to find the right words for, probably if I had to pick the biggest trend in classical music right now, it is the desire to be relevant, which is in one of those overused words, but what it really means is to do things that have meaning to the community. And there you go. And I love that, Ed, you have good taste. Beethoven Emperor Piano Concerto, that is a great piece of music, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, why do we need boundaries between different kinds of art? I think.
I like what Yaki said. Listen to the sounds of our community. You hit the nail right on the head. Thank you, Yaki. Couldn't say it better myself.
I think that we are living in a very, very special time for whatever reasons, if they are political, social, we coming to recognize very, very fundamental and very important things about our life, environmentalism, social issues that we have to face and deal with. So at the beginning of the 20th century, a composer would write a piece of music, which we'd call it a la classical genre. But if the style would be such that if it will not be dissonant and something that most people would resist listening to, it will not be considered relevant or legitimate. Today, we live in a very exciting times. We live in times where the artists, the creative artists, are trying to really blend cultures, genres, sounds, bring living composers to the front in an utmost relevant, rich, and beautiful way. Who would think, that the composer will write the sound of a river in such a powerful way, the way Nancy wrote? I didn't hear the rest of the piece yet, but the very first 5 minutes already were incredibly engaging. She received standing ovation last summer during the premiere, after the premiere of those 5 minutes. So it is so exciting. It is so wonderful. And I actually really want to thank you, the Research Performing Arts Center, for putting emphasis, for focusing on this kind of collaboration. This is major, this is timely, and you're really putting it right in the front. This is our purpose. And I personally am so gratified and so excited about it.
I think we can thank Chris on that one. We obviously did not get to all the questions. I have a whole stack of questions here, but we are running out of time. So what I'm going to encourage all of you to do is join us over by the gallery where we can talk amongst the artwork. Ed is going to be selling his poetry books over there. And that way we can just mingle and enjoy the creativity that's been a part of today's program. So I'd like to thank again everybody here on the panel, Joe, Nancy, Ed, John, Yaki. I hope you all enjoyed that presentation. Remember, this is the first of the 3 Celilo talks that we have for the Insights program. The others are listed on the flyer. And as a special thank you today, if you have not bought your tickets already for the June 4th performance, which is at 7:30 p.m., is that right? 7:30 p.m., June 4th. If you purchase your tickets today, you will actually have a discount on those purchases. And our box office team over there can graciously help you with purchasing those tickets. So with that, I invite you to the gallery. Thank you.